All right, everybody. So if you've been checking out the clips from TYT Sports over the last couple weeks, or if you've been checking out my Hoops Lab on RotoWire, you have seen us talking a lot about all-time player rankings lists. When we were recording for TYT Sports, I was talking with Jason, and after the cameras went off, and he was saying, well, any ranking list that didn't have Michael Jordan, as the all-time number one, just couldn't get his respect. I responded like, what? I mean, there's no guarantee Jordan's number one on my list as it is, but there's definitely a lot of arguments for a lot of other people instead of Jordan. Jason threw down the gauntlet and said, there's no way. So, thus we're here, for me to school the youngster on other ways to think about basketball. So first off, even though we're talking about all these lists, I don't really love top of all time basketball rankings because there's really no way to judge across eras. To me, I think you pick the best player or best couple of few players from a given era, and they could each kind of have an argument as the best of all time. But I mean, there's really not enough common ground to compare the best of the 60s to the best of the 80s to the best of the 2000s. It's just the game changes a lot. That's kind of a starting point. But if you're going to make an all-time list, there's a few ways to approach why Jordan wouldn't necessarily have to be number one. One is to look at individual players and say, okay, who has an argument against Jordan? I always start off with Bill Russell, who very well might be number one on my all-time list if I made one anyway, because a lot of the Jordan has to be the best narrative comes from the fact that he's seen as the greatest modern winner in NBA history. He was on those Bulls teams that won they three-peated, then, he retired, went and played baseball, got himself back in shape, came back a couple years later and they three-peated again. So the feeling is, well, Jordan can't be beat because of these 6 titles and nobody was challenging him. Well, I mean, if you know your history, Bill Russell, he didn't come in with a ring for each finger and then an extra. Bill Russell came in with a ring for each finger on both hands plus one for the toes. So for those who like the rings argument, it's hard to argue against Bill Russell, who's, I believe, the greatest winner in any sport when it comes to championships in a team sport. But beyond that, because that's not a very satisfying way for me to rank players, I look at in-era impact. And Russell's impact when he played in the 60s was bananas. If these days I like to get into the plus minus stats or try to look for ways that a player's presence on the court affected the game. Obviously there's no plus minus from the 60s, but a big group of us did kind of go back and look, at what did the Celtics look like before Russell, what they looked like once he got there, what did they look like while he was there, what happened when he got hurt, what happened when he left. And it was a very clear, just like step function difference. It's like the Celtics were kind of at this level, then they went up here when Russell came, and they stayed way up there for 13 years. Russell got hurt, they lost the title that year. Came back next year, they were winning some more, and then Russell retired and the team came right back down again. It was like very clear. And if you went in closer, it was all about defense. The defense went nuts with Russell, it stayed there, Russell left, the defense went back down. So, his in-era impact is as big or bigger than anything Jordan did. Then you start looking at, well, could he translate across eras? Russell was a basketball genius. People talk about good basketball IQ. Russell, if you ever hear him talk or read his books, the way he approached basketball, the innovations he brought to the game, before Russell came along, it was considered bad defense for a big man to jump to block a shot. And Russell, kind of talked to his coaches and worked through, if I jump and block these shots, I can change the entire way that the opponent has to try to score. So, or if you listen to him talk about the way he approached Wilt Chamberlain and just the mental advantage he had, Russell was a basketball genius. And he was a physical, monster. He was listed as 6'9", but, that was flat feet. These days, if you've ever seen him even now stand next to other NBA players, and you think about how they're listed with shoes on, he'd be probably a 6'11" guy. When you put that with the fact that Russell was a Olympic caliber high jumper in the late 50s. I believe he ranked in the top 5 in the U.S., maybe as high as number 3 in high jumping, and he's almost 7 feet tall. So imagine a 7-foot tall guy who could jump like Jordan. Russell would make a huge impact whenever. So he's one that I think has a great argument against Jordan. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is another one with a great argument against Jordan. In his case, he's got the 6 rings like Jordan. He's got 6 MVPs. And I mean, he's the all-time leading scorer because he played at a stupidly high level for like 20 years. Mike was great, but you could argue that Kareem was better. In real time, during most of Jordan's career, especially the part that overlapped with Magic Johnson, even after Magic had to retire, I would have argued vigorously for Magic over Mike. I just felt like he was a bigger mismatch, a 6'9" point guard. He could control the game. He scored efficiently as any big man. He could rebound like a big man. I felt like he could impact the game in more ways than Mike. And if you trace historically the greatest offenses in NBA history, almost all of them have either Magic Johnson, Steve Nash, or Oscar Robertson running them. Even now, if you were doing a all-time draft and your pick came up, I'm not sure I wouldn't pick Magic above Mike, especially without the kind of fluke HIV thing. Without that, there's no telling. He might be considered by more to be the GOAT anyway. So that's one way to look at it. Another is just kind of to look at the narrative or the legend of Michael Jordan. As I mentioned before, part of the reason he's considered the greatest is that he has the perfect storyline career. He has all these individual records, and then he started winning, and when he started winning, nobody could beat him. Be like Mike. Everyone wanted to be like Mike, and there was a narrative that he just willed the team to win, and he just wanted it more than anyone else. And Jordan was a beast, but the narrative, I think, kind of makes him larger than life in a way that if you examine the situations, it wasn't always like that. Jordan, the way he played wasn't considered good basketball before he came along. A guard that was shooting that much at that volume, when I grew up, they called that gunning. You know what I'm saying? They would say, no, you can't be gunning like that. You got to get your teammates involved. Let them play. It's really only been Phil Jackson, as far as coaches in NBA history, that have been able to harness that super high scoring wing and find a way for everyone else to contribute enough to lead to a championship with that style of play. Phil's done it several times with Jordan and then with Kobe. But outside of that, it's a very rare thing. So I don't know that Jordan's method of success is as robust as a big man, a Russell, a Kareem, who could dominate the game on defense. And also, if they were great on offense, then they could also contribute there, but in such a way that they didn't have to be the only option on offense. The big men are kind of more portable in that sense. You could put Russell or Kareem on pretty much any team with any people playing with them, and they're still going to be able to have a huge impact. The team can maximize itself around them and have good results. Whereas Jordan, if you put him with another high volume scorer or somebody else that needs the ball all the time, they'll be great. You put him out there with LeBron or Kevin Durant or something of that nature, they'll be great, but one of them is going to have to shift into that Pippen role. One of them has to be secondary. They can't both be maximized and have the team also have maximum success. Hopefully, I've schooled the youngster Jason enough to at least acknowledge that you can have a good top list without Jordan being in the number 1 slot, because frankly, I don't know if he's number 1 on my list. So anyway, Jason, what you got to say about it?